Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you that I've always found solace in the delicate art of pastry making. There's something magical about the wave. Flour, sugar, and butter come together to create something beautiful, something that brings joy to others. At Sweet Delights, where I work as a pastry chef, I've crafted countless cakes, pastries, and desserts, each one a testament to my dedication to beauty and precision. My husband, Archie, is a software engineer with a passion for hiking. His love for the outdoors contrasts sharply with my love for the kitchen, yet somehow we've always made it work. Our cute dog Max, a playful golden retriever, completes our small, seemingly perfect family. We live in a cozy house on the outskirts of town where the forest meets civilization, offering us both tranquility and adventure. Our life was picturesque, filled with laughter, love, and the sweet aroma of baking. But beneath this veneer of domestic bliss there were cracks I hadn't noticed or perhaps chose to ignore. It started subtly, like the first hint of a storm. On a clear day I would catch Archie staring into space, his eyes clouded with thoughts he wouldn't share. His hikes became longer, his silences deeper. I told myself it was just the stress of his job, the need for solitude in nature. But there was something else, something unspoken, that hung in the air like the scent of burnt sugar. One evening, as I was decorating a wedding cake, the intricate piping of frosting felt like a metaphor for my life. Everything had to be perfect, seamless. But as I stepped back to admire my work, a single drop of red food coloring fell from the tip of my piping bag, marring the pristine white icing. It was then I realized how fragile perfection can be, how easily it can be tainted. That night I found a note tucked under our coffee machine. It was from Archie, written in his neat, precise handwriting. I need some time alone to read. No explanation, no promise of return. Just those 6 words that felt like a knife slicing through our carefully constructed life. The days that followed were a blur of baking and worry. I threw myself into work creating desserts that were more elaborate than ever, as if I could somehow bake away the uncertainty. Max, sensing the shift in our home, became my shadow, his presence a comforting reminder of the life we had built. But the more I tried to ignore the cracks, the more they seemed to widen. I started noticing things out of place in our home. A book on the shelf turned the wrong way, a drawer slightly ajar, as if someone had been searching for something. Archie's absence grew into a void that seemed to swallow the warmth from our house. One morning, while sifting through flour, I found a small folded piece of paper hidden at the bottom of the bag. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing a phone number and a name I didn't recognize. The handwriting was not Archie's. My heart raced as I dialed the number, my mind racing with possibilities. None of them comforting. The voice on the other end was hesitant, cautious. "Who is this?" they asked. I introduced myself, my voice barely a whisper. There was a pause, then, "I think you should come over. There's something you need to see." The drive was a blur, my thoughts a whirlwind of fear and betrayal. When I arrived at the address, it was an old secluded cabin, the kind Archie would have loved for its solitude. The door creaked open before I could knock, revealing a woman, her face etched with concern. She led me inside, where the walls were lined with photos, maps, and notes. It was then I realized this wasn't just about Archie needing time alone. This was about a secret so deep, so dark it could shatter the idyllic life we had built. As she began to explain, my world started to crumble. The truth was far more complex, far more sinister than I could have imagined. And as I stood there amidst the evidence of a life I didn't know, I understood that the perfection I had strived froze an illusion, and the cracks I had ignored were now gaping charms threatening to consume everything I held dear. The air in the cabin was thick, with a scent of old wood and secrets. The woman, whose name was Evelyn, guided me to a worn leather chair. Her eyes were kind, but carried the weight of knowledge I was about to inherit. "Archie has been involved in something far beyond what you could have imagined," she began, her voice steady but low. "He's not just a software engineer, he's been working on something else." My heart pounded in my C*******T, each feet echoing the dread that was seeping into my bones. "What do you mean, something else?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn sighed, pulling a thick folder from a nearby shelf. "He's part of a group, a secretive organization that uses technology to manipulate information to control narratives. They call themselves the Architects. The name sent a chill down my spine. I remembered Archie's long hours, his sudden trips, the way he'd become so distant. But why would he do this? She handed me the folder. Inside were documents, emails, and photographs. One photo caught my eye immediately. It was Archie, but not the Archie. The first knew he was in a room filled with screens, his face lit by the glow of monitors, looking more like a spy than the man I married. He was recruited for his skills. Evelyn continued. They needed someone who could code, who could think outside the box. But what started as a job became something more personal for him. I flipped through the documents, each page revealing more about this hidden life. There were plans, blueprints, and even notes about me, about our life together, as if it were all part of some grand experiment. He didn't leave because he wanted time alone, Evelyn said, her voice softening. He left to protect you. The Architects are facing scrutiny, and he feared you might get caught in the crossfire. The realization hit me like a wave. All those times I felt alone, all those moments of doubt. They were his way of keeping me safe. But at what cost? Our life, our love. Had it all been a facade? Why show me this now? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow, because Evelyn paused, choosing her words carefully. There's a chance to stop them, to expose them, and Archie, he needs your help. The room seemed to close in around me, the photos on the walls, the maps, the notes. It was all too much. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the window outside. The forest was dense, a perfect cover for secrets. I need to think, I said, more to myself than to her. I need to understand what this means for us. Evelyn nodded, understanding the turmoil. I was in. Take your time. But remember, time isn't something we have in abundance here. I left the cabin with the folder under my arm. My mind racing. The drive back was silent. The only sound, the hum of the engine, and the occasional rustle of paper as I glanced at the documents. Back at home, Max greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, his tail wagging, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I sat at the kitchen table, the very place where Archie and I had shared countless meals, where we had planned our future. Now it felt like a stage set for a tragedy. I opened the folder again, reading through the details. There were names, dates, and operations. It was clear that Archie wasn't just involved. He was pivotal. And now he was asking for my help. Indirectly, through Evelyn the lemon tart. I had planned to bake lay forgotten. Instead, I was piecing together a puzzle of deceit and danger. I thought about the park, the bench where I had felt so alone. Now that loneliness seemed trivial compared to the isolation I felt knowing my husband was part of something so dark. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Should I call him, confront him? Or should I delve deeper into this world he had kept hidden from me? The choice was mine, but the path was fraught with shadows. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across our kitchen, I knew one thing for certain. The life I thought I had was gone. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer just a pastry chef. I was now part of a much larger, more dangerous narrative, and I had to decide how to play my role. Lost in my thoughts, I didn't notice Max had followed me. He bounded over tail, wagging his presence, both comforting and a reminder of my solitude. We played fetch, his joy infectious, momentarily lifting my spirits. However, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, something unexpected occurred. In a moment of confusion, perhaps driven by a cocktail of loneliness and a need for connection, I found myself in a situation with Max that I never imagined possible. It was a moment of physical intimacy that, in my state of emotional turmoil, felt like a bizarre form of comfort. The realization of what had just happened hit me like a cold wave. I sat back on the park bench, my heart racing, feeling a mix of guilt, confusion, and an odd sense of relief. Max, sensing my change in mood, came over and rested his head on my lap, his eyes full of innocent love. This moment of weakness, this fleeting lapse in judgment, was more than just a physical act. It was a stark reflection of my emotional state, a desperate grasp for any form of connection in the void left by Archie's absence. As I stroked Buddy's fur, I couldn't help but wonder how this would impact my life, how it would change the way I saw myself, and how it might affect my relationship with Archie if he ever returned. The park was emptying, now the dusk painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. I stood up feeling the weight of my actions, and began the walk home with Max by my side. Each step felt heavier than the last, laden with the burden of my newfound solitude and the secret I now carried. Back at home, the silence was deafening. The house once filled with laughter, and the clatter of utensils now echoed with the emptiness of my life. I went to the kitchen, where the remnants of my last baking project lay abandoned. The lemon tart, now a symbol of my interrupted life, sat on the counter, its perfection a cruel reminder of the chaos within. I poured myself a glass of wine, the liquid reflecting the dim light of the setting sun. As I sipped, I tried to piece together the fragments of my life. The folder from Evelyn lay on the table, its contents a Pandora's box of secrets. I opened it again, the papers rustling like whispers of betrayal. Each document, each photograph was a piece of a puzzle. I was still trying to solve the architect's, Archie's role, the danger he was trying to shield me from. It all swirled in my mind, mixing with the guilt of my earlier actions. I thought about calling Archie, confronting him with everything I had learned, but something held me back. Was it fear? Or was it the lingering hope that there was still something worth salvaging between us? The night deepened, and with it my resolve. I knew I couldn't go on baking away my problems, ignoring the cracks in my life. I had to face them, confront them. But first I needed to understand the full scope of what Archie was involved in, what he was protecting me from. I turned on my laptop, the screen's glow, casting an eerie light in the dark kitchen. I began to research, diving into the dark web, looking for any mention of the architects. The deeper I went, the more I realized the extent of their reach, their manipulation of narratives, their control over information. Hours passed, and with each discovery, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about Archie anymore. It was about truth, about justice, about reclaiming my life from the shadows of deceit. Max, ever loyal, lay at my feet, his presence's silent support. I looked down at him, his eyes meeting mine with an unwavering trust. We're in this together, aren't we, Max? I whispered, feeling a surge of determination. The night was far from over, and as I continued my research, I knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger. But I also knew that I could no longer be the passive creator of beauty and sweetness. I had to become an architect of my own fate, to rebuild from the ruins of what was once my perfect life. The implications of my moment with Max, the secrets of Archie, and the looming threat of the architects. It was all part of a new narrative, one where I was no longer just a bystander, but a protagonist in a story of my own making. The days following were a blur. Guilt consumed me, eating away at my conscience. I avoided Archie, unable to look him in the eye, fearing he might see the truth in my gaze. My work suffered. My pastries lacked their usual finesse, and my colleagues noticed my distraction. Archie, sensing something was wrong, tried to bridge the gap, suggesting we spend more time together, perhaps go on a vacation. His kindness only deepened my guilt. I was trapped in a cycle of self-loathing, unable to confess, yet unable to move past the incident. Every morning, I'd wake up with the weight of my secret pressing down on me. The kitchen, once my sanctuary, now felt like a stage where I was performing for an audience that knew all my flaws. The flour, sugar, and butter no longer danced in harmony under my hands. Instead, they seemed to resist, as if they too knew the truth I was hiding at work. The usual chatter and laughter felt like a distant echo. My colleagues, who once praised my creations, now exchanged worried glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The wedding cake I was tasked with decorating seemed to mock me with its demand for perfection. Each swirl of icing, each delicate flower, was a reminder of the facade I was maintaining. One evening, as I was closing up the bakery, Archie appeared at the door. His eyes, usually warm and inviting, were now searching. Probing. "Let's go for a walk," he suggested, his voice gentle but firm. I couldn't refuse. Not when he looked at me with such concern. We walked in silence through the park where Max and I had our moment. The trees, now silhouettes against the setting sun, seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Archie took my hand, his touch both comforting and accusatory. I've been thinking, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we need a change of scenery, a break from all this tension. His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken questions. I wanted to tell him everything to unburden myself, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, feeling the lie grow heavier with each step we took back at home. The silence was palpable. I tried to focus on baking, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. But my hand shook. The lemon tart, once a symbol of my skill, now lay in ruins on the counter. Its filling, oozing out like my own hidden truths. Archie, ever observant, noticed my distress. Is everything okay? He asked, his concern genuine. I forced a smile. Just tired. I lied, hating myself for it. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the shadows playing out scenes of what could happen if I confessed. Would he leave? Would he understand the thought of losing him, of losing? What we had built was unbearable. Yet the weight of my secret was crushing. The next day I decided to take a walk alone, hoping the fresh air might clear my mind. The park was quiet. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and my own footsteps. Max, sensing my need for solitude, stayed back, his eyes following me with a mix of concern and loyalty. As I walked, I replayed the moment with Max in my mind, each detail vivid and painful. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering doubts and fears. Was I a monster for seeking comfort in such an unconventional way? Could I ever look at Max the same way again? I found myself at the bench where it all happened. Sitting down, I felt the cold wood through my jeans, a stark contrast to the warmth of Max's fur. I closed my eyes, trying to find peace. But the images of Archie, of our life together, and the folder from Evelyn flashed before me. The decision loomed large. Confess to Archie or continue the charade. The thought of confessing was terrifying, not just because of the potential fallout, but because it would mean admitting to myself that I had strayed, however momentarily, from the path I thought I was on. I stood up, my resolve hardening. I couldn't let this secret destroy us. I needed to confront it, to face Archie with the truth, no matter the cost. The walk back home felt like a march to my own execution, each step a commitment to honesty. Entering the house, I found Archie in the kitchen, his back to me. As he prepared dinner, the aroma of garlic and herbs filled the room, a stark contrast to the cold dread in my heart. Archie, I started, my voice trembling. We need to talk. He turned, his expression shifting from casual to concerned. What's wrong? He asked, setting down the knife he was using. I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. I've done something, and I need to tell you about it. The room seemed to shrink as the gravity of my confession filled the space between us. Archie's face was unreadable, a mask of calm that belied the storm I knew was brewing inside him. I'm listening, he said, his voice steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. I began to recount the events, my voice faltering at times, the words tasting like ash as I spoke. The truth spilled out, not just about Max, but about the cabin, about Evelyn, about the architects. Each revelation was like peeling back layers of a wound, exposing the raw, painful truth. Archie listened, his face steady and restraint. When I finished, the silence was deafening. He took a step back, his eyes scanning my face as if searching for the person he thought he knew. I need some time, he finally said, his voice low, almost a whisper. To process this, I nodded, understanding the gravity of what I had just shared. He walked past me, his steps echoing in the quiet house, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my guilt, and the remnants of a life that now felt irrevocably altered. As the door closed behind him, I sat down, the weight of my confession settling around me like a shroud. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the path of truth, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. And now I had to wait to see if our love could withstand the storm I had unleashed. The truth came out in the most unexpected manner during a family gathering. Max, in his playful exuberance, jumped on me, and in that moment, something in his behavior triggered a memory for someone else. My sister-in-law, who had been observing my odd behavior, pieced together the puzzle. She confronted me in the kitchen, away from the others, her voice a mix of shock and concern. Luna, what's going on with you? She asked, her eyes searching mine for answers I had been too afraid to give. The confrontation was like a dam breaking. I confessed everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of tears and shame. I told her about the cabin, about Evelyn, about the architects, and then with a voice barely above a whisper, I shared the incident with Max. The room seemed to close and around me as I awaited her reaction. Knowing this would soon reach Archie, she listened, her face a canvas of emotions, disbelief, sadness, and finally a deep empathetic understanding. Luna. This is a lot, she said, her voice soft. But you need to tell Archie, he deserves to know. The fallout from my confession was immediate and devastating. The next morning I found Archie sitting at the kitchen table. The folder from Evelyn spread out before him. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, as if he had aged years overnight. I didn't want you involved in this, he said, his voice hoarse. I was trying to protect you. The air was thick with tension, the silence between us filled with the weight of unspoken words. I sat across from him, feeling the chasm that had opened up in our relationship. Archie, I'm so sorry. I began, my voice breaking. I didn't know how to handle everything. I was lost and I made a mistake. He looked at me, his gaze piercing through the layers of our shared life. A mistake. His voice was cold, distant. Luna. This isn't just about that. It's about everything, about lies, about secrets. I nodded, the guilt and fear intertwining like vines around my heart. I know, and I'm here now, ready to face it all with you, to help you if you'll let me. Archie stood up, pacing the room. The architects, they're dangerous, Luna. They manipulate. They control. I was in deep, but I was trying to find a way out for us. The revelation of his involvement with such a group was like a physical blow. Why didn't you tell me? My voice was a mix of hurt and accusation. I wanted to keep you safe, he replied, stopping to look at me. But now, with everything out in the open, we're both in danger. The gravity of our situation, settled in our life, once filled with the simple joys of baking and hiking, was now shadowed by a threat. Neither of us fully understood. What do we do now? I asked, feeling the weight of our new reality. We need to expose them. Archie, said, determination hardening his features, but we have to be careful. They have eyes everywhere. The plan was to gather more evidence, to find allies within or outside the architects who might help us. Archie explained that he had been working on a project, a digital footprint that could potentially bring down the organization. He needed my help to access and decrypt certain files, using my knowledge of his systems and our shared history. Over the next few days we worked in tandem, the tension between us palpable, but slowly giving way to a renewed sense of partnership. Each piece of data we uncovered was like a puzzle piece, slowly revealing the extent of the architect's reach. One evening, as we sat surrounded by papers and screens, Archie reached out, taking my hand. Luna, I need to know, can we get through this? I looked at him, seeing the man I married beneath the layers of secrecy and fear. Yes, I said, my voice firm. We will. Our relationship was strained, but the shared danger brought us closer. In a way, we were no longer just husband and wife. We were co-conspirators in a battle against a shadowy enemy. The next step was to meet with someone. Archie trusted an old colleague who had left the architects under mysterious circumstances. We arranged a clandestine meeting at a remote location, ensuring no one followed us. The drive was tense, filled with the silence of unspoken fears. When we arrived, the man whose name was Greg was waiting. His face was lined with the marks of someone who had seen too much. Archie, Luna. He greeted, his voice low. I've been expecting you. What you're planning is risky but necessary. Greg provided us with more insights into the architects' operations, their methods of control, and their vulnerabilities. He also gave us a list of names, people who could be allies or informants. As we left, the weight of our mission felt heavier, but so did the bond between Archie and me. We were in this together, not just for survival, but to reclaim our lives from the shadows of deceit. Back home, we continued our work, now with a clearer path. Each day was a step closer to exposing the architects, but also a step closer to mending what had been broken between us. The incident with Max, though still a source of deep regret, became a catalyst for change. It forced us to confront not just the external threats, but the internal ones as well. We talk more openly, our conversations filled with the raw honesty of people who had been to the brink and back, as we prepared for the final push against the architects. I realized that the cracks in our life, once ignored, had now been filled with a new kind of strength. We were rebuilding not just our relationship, but our entire world, one truth at a time. And in that process I found not just the man I loved, but a partner in a fight for justice, for truth, and for the life we both deserved. The future was uncertain, fraught with danger, but for the first time in a long while, I felt we were facing it together as equals, as survivors. The aftermath was devastating. Archie was heartbroken. His trust shattered. Our marriage, once a source of joy, now felt like a facade. He moved out, taking Max with him, leaving me in the house that now echoed with the silence of my solitude. I sought therapy, trying to understand my actions, to find forgiveness within myself. The bakery became my refuge, where I poured my heart into my work. Each pastry a step towards healing. Over time, I learned to live with my mistake, not as a defining moment, but as a part of my journey. Archie and I eventually found a new normal, not as husband and wife, but as three people who once shared a life, now navigating separate paths, with a mutual respect for the past we shared. Would I ever find peace, or would this shadow always linger over my life? The days stretched into weeks, each one a battle against the guilt and the void left by Archie's departure. Therapy sessions became my anchor, a place where I could dissect my emotions piece by piece. My therapist, Dr. Sophia, had a gentle way of guiding me through the labyrinth of my own psyche. "Luna, your actions were a cry for help, a way to feel connected when you felt utterly alone," she said during one session, her voice calm and understanding. "It's not about the act itself, but what it represented in your life at that moment." Her words were like balm to my wounds, but the healing was slow. At the bakery, I threw myself into work with a fervor that surprised even myself. The kitchen, once a place of joy, was now a battleground where I fought to reclaim my sense of self. Every cake I baked, every pastry I crafted was an attempt to stitch back together the fragments of my identity. The first time I saw Archie, after he moved out, was at a local cafe. It was awkward, the air thick with unsaid words. He looked different, his face lined with the weight of our shared past. "I've been staying with a friend," he said, his voice neutral, almost distant. "Max is doing well." I nodded, the mention of Max sending a pang through my heart. "I'm glad to hear that," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. We talked about mundane things, avoiding the elephant in the room. But as we parted, he paused, his eyes meeting mine with a flicker of the old warmth. "I'm sorry, Luna, for everything." His apology, so unexpected, broke something inside me. I realized then that our relationship, though broken, was not devoid of love. It was just different now. Therapy continued, and with each session I began to understand more about myself. I wasn't just a victim of circumstances. I had agency, the power to shape my future. Dr. Sophia encouraged me to explore new hobbies, to find joy outside of baking and the remnants of my past life. With Archie, I started painting, something I hadn't done since college. The canvas became another outlet, a place where I could express the turmoil inside without words. Each brush's stroke was a step away from the darkness towards a light I was beginning to see. Months passed, and I received an invitation to a small gathering at Archie's new place. It was a step towards normalcy, a sign that we could perhaps be friends, or at least not enemies. The evening was tense at first, but as the night wore on, laughter replaced the initial awkwardness. Archie had started seeing someone, a fact he shared with a cautious smile. "Her name is Emily. She's good for me, Luna." I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, but also a strange sense of closure. "I'm happy for you, Archie, truly," I said, and I meant it. Our conversations shifted to lighter topics, and for a moment it felt like old times. Max, now older and calmer, lay at Archie's feet, his tail thumping softly on the floor. When he saw me, it was a bittersweet reunion, a reminder of what was and what could never be again. As I left, Archie walked me to the door. "You look different." Luna, lighter eye, smiled, feeling the truth in his words. "I'm trying to be. It's not easy, but I'm getting there." Driving home, I reflected on the evening. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I was learning to live with it, to let it be part of my story without defining it. The bakery thrived under my renewed focus. I introduced new recipes, each one a testament to my journey of self-discovery. My colleagues noticed the change, the lightness in my step, the creativity in my work. One day, a customer, an older woman with kind eyes, commented on a lemon tart I had just finished. "This looks like it was made with love," she said, her voice full of warmth. I smiled, feeling a genuine joy. "Thank you, it's part of my healing." She nodded, understanding more than I expected. Sometimes we find peace in the most unexpected places. Her words echoed in my mind. As I closed the bakery that night, the question of peace lingered. But for the first time I felt I might actually find it not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of growth, of understanding, and of moving forward. The shadow of my past would always be there, a part of me, but it no longer had to be the darkest part. With each day, each pastry, each stroke of paint, I was crafting a new narrative, one where I was not just surviving but living. And in that living there was a peace that was slowly but surely becoming mine. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks.